Okay, fifth grade. This is part 2 of our sock and shoe drawing project. First, I'm going to share my screen with you to show you a few pictures of the shoes, and then I'll jump in and show you how we're going to draw the shoe based off the length of our sock, and how we can cut them out and glue them together. Okay? So last week we talked about the different type of socks that we could create. They should be colorful. They should be thoughtful in our design. I'm going to remember we're going from the top of the calf muscle to the bottom of your ankle bone. Okay, because believe it or not, that's where your foot fits. Your foot will fit right in that space. It's all part of the human proportions. Okay. So when we pick our shoe, you want to make sure that you pick a profile view of your shoe. Okay, one that's off to the side. It's going to be easiest to draw it that way, and it's going to make the most sense for the way that we've drawn our sock. Okay, so this one, if you found this one line, would be great. It has a lot of details in here with the soles, with some of the patterns. Notice that the laces are kind of like these little rectangle shapes that kind of curl over the shoe. That works out really well when we draw those. We don't need to worry about making all the loops in the strings. If you want to, you can, but an effective rounded rectangle works out just well. Here's another one. A shoe facing the nice profile, facing the right direction. Remember, too, that it should match the direction of your calf muscle. If the shoe's facing this way, then we want to make sure that our calf muscle's off here to the right, and the front is your shin bone. Okay, so here's some other pictures. These three would work, the pencil ones, the black and white ones, because they're all profile views. This color running shoe here is starting to become a little more of a 3/4 view, meaning I can see a lot of the front of it. While this picture would work, anything more extreme, meaning where it's facing you, facing more directly at you, is going to be harder to draw, and it's going to throw off our measurements. So you really want to stick with a side profile view. Okay? All right. So we'll get started on here. You will need a ruler or some way of measuring your sock, okay? Because again, believe it or not, your foot fits in this space, as well as that your foot also fits between the bones of your wrist here to the bone of your elbow. That is also the distance of your foot. So measure this, and you want to get as close as possible. Right now I have 8 1/4, which works out pretty well, but if it was 8 3/16, maybe I could just make it 8 1/4 to make it easier. Okay. So once I have that number, I'm going to set my sock aside. On a fresh piece of paper, I'm going to draw a line that's the same length as my sock. So it's 8 1/4, meaning my shoe now, the front of it needs to be here and the back needs to be here. Okay, that's how long our shoe needs to be to make sense to fit for our socks so they line up. This line that we've drawn is not the sole of the shoe. It's just to tell us how long to make it. Okay, so let's say I'm going to draw my shoe. You want to find a picture online, or you can use your own. Usually the front toe curves up a little bit. The heel is going to come down. Okay, so I have my general shape of my shoe now. The tongue would be here. Sole. Okay, now I would start to go in and start to add the details. So if I had this part of the sole that's here in the front, the toe cup, here's where the tongue would be. Now the laces, again, I'm just going to make that, I call them those rounded rectangles. What I do is I kind of round this part, draw my line here, and you would erase then the center lines. And it's going to read just like the laces have gone over the the tongue of the shoe. So erase all of those. I'm not going to worry about the top part where they're tied because we kind of get the idea from here. So then you want to decide what else other parts you're going to draw. If it's a Nike shoe, and I have the Nike logo on here. I have that. Any other designs or logos that you would have on, you would want to draw those the best that you can. Okay. And then from here, you would move on to coloring it very much the same way. I'd probably outline it with a Sharpie. You could use a thicker one. Or if you have a thin Sharpie, you can use that. Take your time. Okay, outline everything. And then the same thing, coloring it, you can use crayons, you could use your markers. I would probably match it to whatever you did with your sock. Okay, that's just going to make the most sense when it's done. All right, now when we go to cut these out, you want to use scissors, or I'm going to use an X-Acto knife real quick. So I'm going to cut this one out, and I'll show you the size. You do not have to use an X-Acto knife. Scissors would work out just fine. I just happen to have the X-Acto knife right here. You want to get your lines as close as you can to the edge. So I've got my shoe here. The next step is, set that aside, is to cut out the sock. Now for the sock, I do want to leave a little tab down here for glue or for tape. Okay. So I've got my sock here, and I didn't, if you notice where I cut out of the sock, I left that hole up here. I just needed that rounded edge. So set these aside to get the contrast. So you can see then my foot, okay, I would put the glue in here, and you would line this up so that it would fill the shoe. And you have a shoe and a sock. There's a little bit of a skew on my angle here that are in like the correct proportions. Okay? All right. I'll be excited to see what you guys have made.